Double waiver?
Sorry, I misspoke. There's two waivers of Holy Grailness approved this week. What are they? Don't skip the stats. Get to that.
Well, we gotta go. We gotta do the totals, bro.
Oh, we're doing the okay. If you're still listening to this garbage, this cliffhanger suspense movie, we'll get to the waiver totals. But Jakey is gonna break some amazing news on some waiver approvals. So let's get back to it. Welcome to Waiver Watch episode 19 on March 22nd, 2020. We are 107 Waivers, and each week we bring to you some of the most interesting waivers approved by the FAA in the week prior. And this week is a phenomenal week for approvals, not in number sense, but in some special approvals that were put out there that are the holy grail of waivers. Jakey, what am I talking about, holy grail?
The holy hand grenade. All right, so 48 waivers this week. Not bad. We had 41.
Hold on. You're like, it's a cliffhanger. There is an amazing double waiver approved. What is it? I'm dying to know.
Amazing double waiver?
Sorry, I misspoke. There's two waivers of Holy Grailness approved this week. What are they? Don't skip the stats. Get to that.
Well, we gotta go. We gotta do the totals, bro.
Oh, we're doing the okay. If you're still listening to this garbage, this cliffhanger suspense movie, we'll get to the waiver totals. But Jakey is gonna break some amazing news on some waiver approvals. So let's get back to it. Sorry. Blah blah. Waiver totals, go.
Yeah, we'll rattle them off here. Let's see how fast we can do it.
All right.
48 waivers total. 41 night waivers. 5 parachute waivers. Although one of them was combined with a night waiver. 2 for 1. 2 BV loss. It's 107, 31, and 33.
Whoa.
And that's it.
You said it so nonchalantly. 2 BV loss waivers? Are you kidding me?
Yeah. It was rattle them off.
Rattle them off. Okay. So
I think everybody got that. Let's get to it.
The two waivers that we're going to talk about today are the BV loss waivers. These are the holy grail waivers that everyone wants. So we're going to deep dive into them and talk about how far BV loss are we really talking, and what type of operation have we kind of uncovered that one of these waivers is doing. So let's jump into it.
This is a good one.
Who is the special person or company that received this first BV loss waiver we're going to talk about?
Yeah, so Florida Power Light, Eric Schwartz. They got the 107, 31, and 33. It's a pretty early number, 589. So Florida Power Light is a PSP, a Partnership for Safety program. That probably explains the quick turnaround on this. Those projects have kind of direct coordination with the FAA on a weekly basis, program meetings, all that. So, and the waiver does supersede an old waiver of NextEra Energies, which is a little interesting because it normally cancels your own company's waivers, not somebody else's company waiver. But if you look a little more closely, it's NextEra Energy is the holding company of Florida Power and Light. So Eric Schwartz probably does like enterprise, UAS for that whole group of them. But let's get to the good stuff on the provisions here. So we do have a graphic in the blog post. So go there to take a look at this, and we're going to kind of just explain what this type of BV loss is. So go, Brent. What you got?
Yeah, so jump on over to 107waivers.com and check out our blog page for this visual representation if you're listening on our podcast. So basically, in provision 9 of this waiver, it describes something about the VO having to basically deconflict a 2 statute mile radius of airspace surrounding the UAS in flight. So this waiver kind of shows like what does that actually, or this graphic kind of helps shows what that actually means. So generally, you can see a UAS only so far. However, a large manned aircraft coming in, maybe it's a Cessna or a helicopter, Bell helicopter, or something like that, right? Something of size. You can see these much farther than you can see a drone. So what Florida Power and Light's doing here is they're using that use case or that safety case right there to really just say, hey, we don't really need to see our drone the entire time. We just need to safely deconflict the airspace so that we can yield to manned traffic. So the provisions that they have is that they've convinced the FAA in their safety case that we can go out to 2 statute miles with the VO, visually deconflicting airspace, around the SUA. So
SUA, small unmanned aircraft, right?
That's right. So speaking of SUA, tell us more about this exciting investigative journalism that we've done to determine what is this SUA.
Yeah, so FPL, there's some news out there. They're not necessarily super secret about what they're doing. But yeah, quick Google search. There's a video of them taking off with this drone in a box at this power plant in the background. And it even mentions like the 2-mile radius and everything. We have a link to it in our blog post here, so go check that out. But so it's probably a pretty safe assumption that this is the Percepto drone in a box solution with the Sparrow aircraft that they call it.
Yep.
And it's probably at their Martin power generating plant in Florida.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's a cool concept. Drone in a box at a power plant, probably doing things like maybe perimeter security, imaging, probably a little bit of mapping if they can. They could fly at day, fly at night. The Sparrow is actually weatherproof too, so that's kind of all-purpose drone here. So one thing too, like to make it a little bit more interesting, when I saw the Sparrow on Percepto's website, the first thing that I thought was the head where the EO and IO is. It looks like Johnny Five from Short Circuit. So this is a cool little drone, and we were talking offline earlier that this is actually looks like one of those drones that are just so much farther down, like in the maturity of the aircraft. It looks really good. It's has all the components are well sealed with inside. This is probably because of the weather, weatherproofing that this drone has, the all weather. So it's super interesting that it looks like a polished product, right? So a lot of drones, you see companies start up, they're really bootstrapping it, and there's carbon fiber and exposed parts and all this stuff. But this drone really looks good, and so does that clamshell. So, yeah, we had talked about like Matternet too. I mean, you're right. There's like a big difference between that carbon fibery look. I mean, it's like standard look, right? A couple plates of carbon, some things in the middle, but it really starts to take it up a notch when you get this molded plastic. And
right,
on one hand, you could say, well, it's pointless extra weight, but yeah, there's something to be said about looking good, and it helps with the weatherproofing, I'm sure. So multiple use, right? Right.
They're spending time, right, to develop this product, like not only the physical capabilities, but the fact that, if I drove a Ford and Chevy and it looked like, garbage, I probably wouldn't drive it, So design does matter. Anyways, we're getting a little bit sidetracked there, but
yeah. So anyways, the drone in a box. It's worth mentioning just this concept in general. It's kind of one that we're very excited about. It's very futuristic. It really takes advantage of the current state of technology, I think, with drones. You don't need to fly like 30, 100 miles to get inspections done. You can just put these boxes out and collect data. So
I can't remember what episode we were talking about, but you talk about the current state of the technology that's available, right? And there are detect and avoid solutions out there, but it's like very cost prohibitive, super expensive, right? In this one, they're just using people to deconflict. That's their detect and avoid. And we've gone over this before. This is like a very strategic route, I think, is to use people to mature the technology like gradually, right? You always hear people say crawl, walk, run approach. Like, so everyone's working on detect and avoid. Well, what about the aircraft capability? How well does it perform consistently, time and time again, and grow each vertical, drone vertical and detect and avoid vertical, grow them at the same time, but keep practicing in BV loss conditions, even though it's, 2 miles, whatever, it's still good to exercise these ConOps in lower ranges versus, trying to shoot for the moon and getting 30 miles. Like start here. It's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, you can get a lot done in 2 miles, right? I mean, I think BV loss, just that word always, I think previously brought to mind, flying huge distances like manned aircraft. I mean, of course, when you go from a manned aircraft world to unmanned, you kind of have the same thoughts, right? But if you break that mold a little bit, instead of buying one large, really expensive unmanned aircraft that can cover huge distances, why not buy 50 small ones and put them in a box and just distribute them around, right? So you don't need one that can cover all your power plants in Florida. Just put one box at each plant, and if it can fly 2 miles, that's all you need, right?
Right.
And then you don't have to worry about DAA systems that cover these large areas, because that's really challenging. Same thing with C2. It's really, other than SATCOM, it's really difficult to cover long distances with a reliable link. So
you're not really going to be punching out that C2 super far, right? Unless you have substantial infrastructure, right? That's like another thing. Like,
right.
You're going to need a tower. You're going to need repeaters. And luckily, these, the energy industry has some of this infrastructure in place already to do remote operations of valves and whatnot. But this is just going to drive costs up. So it's maybe stepping back, right, and having that, no pun intended, out of box solution, kind of in mind, right? But
maybe in the box solution.
In the box, right? Drone in the box. So certainly, I like where you're going with that. Step back, try to break the traditional mold and think differently about how can we solve operational challenges, in a different sense. BVLOS doesn't have to be 30 miles. It can be 2 miles. And what can we get done there? And also, what can the FAA learn if they start approving these more shorter distance BVLOS operations? Maybe we'll get to wide scale BVLOS faster that way. Just a thought.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning too, like you said, how do they get this approval? So probably some of the good safety case things here were, this power plant is a defined controlled area, so there's probably not humans.
Restricted access, right?
Or at least non-participating humans, probably employees with hard hats and so on. So I'm sure there was some safety case involving the controlled access. And then even like the airspace, there's some huge stacks at this plant, probably over 100 feet tall easily.
Right.
And so that kind of deters manned aircraft from being in this airspace. So a lot of good just elements of a plant that kind of lend to the safety case that got this. So
for sure,
it's all good. Sure. It's a good use case.
So this is an awesome waiver to see come across, especially in the first of the years here for 2020. We've broken the mold of our traditional, night waiver, observer people, and high altitude. There was no high altitude this week, right?
There was not.
We've talked so much about high altitude.
Freeport's been slacking, or maybe they finally got all their minds back.
Was it what's his first name?
Travis.
Travis Clement. I actually shot Travis an email. So Travis, if you're watching this, please respond back. I'd love to chat with you, Jake and I both. So. Yep. Anyways, let's transition into that next one. BVLOS waiver. So yes, 2 BVLOS waivers in one episode. What is this world coming to?
So this one is actually not, it's new, but it's actually not new. So we'll explain here. So it's a Massachusetts DOT 10731 and 33 waiver. But this one's, just like the previous one, supersedes an old waiver. And it turns out we've actually covered that waiver in episode 3. So
way back.
Go back, kind of read that episode if you want to get up to speed. But this waiver was awarded to Rob Knockenhauer at Massachusetts DOT. And it seems that since he has left and kind of moved on to start his own thing, so this really is just a name change. It's the same waiver, but just changing the responsible person.
Right. So let's talk about that, because last week we were mentioning drone zone account issues. Like an RFI you can get when you have like a night waiver out. If your company name doesn't match your documents and all this, it's like basically clerical technical errors. So we started talking about the fact that if you are working at a company, a larger company, enterprise, that's going to be around for a while, you have this turnover with employees, good and bad turnover, so it's, but this is going to happen. And if you're not thinking about this, you may just cause yourself some extra problems down the road, or just some extra work that's not necessary if you plan one step farther. So a solution to this, an employee leaving, that is the head of the UAS group. What you would want to do is have like a company email and, basically credentials that are shared within like your aviation department or something like that. and it's assigned to the person that's currently managing it. But when they leave, if they have a personal account, they started this underneath their name and they just happen to put the company name as the people in there, that's going to go with them. So if they leave on bad terms, they could totally just take that stuff with them. And certainly that's going to be some internal things that companies are going to have to work out. But to alleviate that, just create a general account with an email when the employees leave or, turnover, or even do internal promotions, right? Where they're no longer in that division. You can simply switch a name, do this all within Drone Zone, and then everything's updated, and then you might have to resubmit with a, what is it called, Jakey? When you changing the responsible person up.
Yeah. There's really not a specific button you pick to do this. So yeah, waivers are tied to accounts. So as long as you have access to the account that the waiver is, you would just log in. You would probably update the profile to, the new name. In this case, it's Jeffrey DiCarlo. So he would update that information, and then he would request the same waivers or regulations. But then if you recall, at the bottom, there's always the list of your, waivers on your account. So you'd open up that list, select the one that you're changing the name on, and then you just hit submit. And really, you don't have to submit the safety case again or anything like that. As long as you want the exact same waiver, all you have to do is update your profile, select the old one, and then submit, and the FAA will process it. And unfortunately, you have to kind of sit in a queue, but that's
right.
Otherwise, it's fairly simple. And I think the DAC meeting, the FAA is actually looking to fix this, right, Brent? There was some news on the DAC meeting on their Drone Zone updates.
There wasn't some explicit, ideas thrown out there on what they're going to do, but they did have mentioned something, along basically the administrative, managing of the accounts. They're going to make some changes. So this is definitely probably some of the things this is not going to be the first or the last time that this is going to happen. And so it'll be nice to update maybe the workflows in Drone Zone to, when you have the promotions and turnovers of different responsible people, how do you alleviate, hard pressed things to change, to make resubmissions to get these things correctly, the paperwork updated essentially. So more to come. We'll just have to kind of keep tabs on that. I know certainly nothing's going to be implemented overnight with that.
And so let's hit on this. So this is a BVLAS waiver. Let's just do a really quick recap on it. I mean, again, we covered this in episode 3, but it's interesting because this one is a little different than Florida Power and Light. So we have another graphic, and we call this concept daisy chain visual observers. So Florida Power and Light, it seems like they're probably going to stay in one spot and kind of cover their plant, so they can fly within that 2-mile radius. All's good. But there's also another concept where you can put another additional VO downrange and then fly to that VO and past them, and you end up getting a much further flight distance from the pilot. It's not necessarily out of sight of anybody. There's still a VO watching it. It's just you can kind of extend that range in a linear fashion. So
so the big difference, like you just had mentioned there, between these two BVLAS waivers, one doesn't require you to have line of sight with the drone at all times. This waiver does. So big difference, right? Deconflict airspace versus eyes on the drone at all times.
Yeah.
And then, just like maybe the strategy for deconfliction also would be different too, right? Because if the VO can physically see the drone and the aircraft inbound, they're able to give some better instructions on, positioning of the aircraft, and then the pick can decide what he or she wants to do.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, that's a crazy week, right? 2 BVLAS waivers, no high altitude. A little bit sad not to cover one of those again, but
we beat the dead horse on those, right?
That's right. That's right. So
good change of pace here.
Great to see this. Hopefully, what would be nice to see is maybe a BVLAS waiver that is not part of any program, no IPP, no PSP, just straight up, general drone operators, someone getting something like this. This would be amazing, because then there'd be some hope for the majority out there.
Yeah. I think that is still a tall order, unfortunately, but
so that's why I agree.
Hopefully
it still is the holy grail, right?
See some expansion of this, and scalability, I think, is always the word that we use. So
Right. So what would be nice is people watch this episode. There's going to be drone operators that are in certain positions that can replicate this this con-op here, especially the Florida Power and Light Company one. And it'd be interesting to have people submit those and just get these in front of the FAA. They might deny them straight up, but at least the attempt's going to be there, and put some time and effort into the con-op. Maybe this will push things forward. IPP is going to wrap up this year, so we're supposed to be getting good things out of that. Hopefully, in the meantime, we can get some other things pushing. So,
yeah.
All right. So, amazing episode 19, 2 BV loss waivers. So, I guess we'll see what happens, right?
Yeah, it's a crazy time out there, so stay healthy, practice that social distancing, and we will catch you next week.
That's right. Take care.
Fly safe.